Hey everybody, welcome back to Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl. I'm Carl Raven,
I'm Tiff Salcido.
and joining us today is a very special guest and a friend of both of ours, and someone I consider a mentor, is Glenn Basconcillo, who is the founder and president of G&B Consulting Incorporated, and he works with tribal governments, federal partners, and local agencies to strengthen cross-system partnerships, supporting youth and families. His career spans more than 35 years in leadership, policy, program development, and organizational management in social services, including stints as the Chief Operations Officer and TANF Director for the Owens Valley Career Development Center, which is a large tribal TANF organization and tribal organization. And he expanded their tribal TANF program into one of the nation's largest. And also, he was in the leadership team for a organization near and dear to my heart, Kern County Department of Human Services. And so he's here today to share with us some of his insight and wisdom and experience. So everyone, please welcome Glenn. Glenn, thanks for being here. Oh, and also, he is someone else near and dear to my heart. He is a Long Beach State dirtbag. So,
All
um,
right.
and those of you who know what a dirtbag is, well, I'll explain it to you. Tiff, do you know what a dirtbag is?
I've met a few in my life, but I
Yeah.
did find out, I did find out these dirt bags are baseball related because I was curious when I heard about the dirt bag situation. I was like, oh, what? But it's tell me baseball. It's baseball.
That's
It
correct.
is baseball. Yeah. Hey, Glenn, did you guys play at Blair Field?
We did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I had to try it with the Long Beach Barracudas.
The Barracudas.
Yeah. Way
Fun.
back in the olden days, right?
Yeah.
Actually, we had one tryout there at Blair Field and one tryout at the park on campus right near the big pyramid. So, yeah.
Yeah, the
So cool.
pyramid was a dream when I was
Yeah.
there. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It
They
was
had still
interesting.
it still had a football team when I was going in there. Yeah.
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 Yeah. With Terrell Davis. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. From the
Yeah.
Broncos. Yeah. Very cool. So, Glenn, yeah, we brought you here today just to tap into your knowledge and expertise and just thinking about what you've seen in your experience and as a leader. So just share with us your journey to
Sure.
becoming a leader in
Yeah.
social services and working in those different organizations. So
So my journey started sort of like when I was in college, is as you get towards graduating and a senior, you say, I've got to find a real job. And I my major was sociology, and I found that very interesting and wanted to be a public servant. I mean, I originally wanted to coach, but wanted to be a public servant because I think it's it's uh, it's a need. Quality public service in human services is a need in every community. And being from, Central California, where poverty levels are higher than disproportionately higher than the rest of the state, it was important for me. And also just recognizing that, all of us, everyone is one accident, one um, issue, one situation from being on the other side of public assistance or child welfare or any adult services as well. But so I started my career in the county's human services department, in eligibility, and worked my way up the ladder, recognizing that, I think you could be more impactful in a leadership position to assist people. So went through the supervisor, training unit supervisor for staff, and ultimately became program director during a reorg that was very, very important at the time because it was getting close to a lot of discussion of welfare reform. The public sentiment for public assistance was not very positive. So I was the program director for all the district offices in a very large California county. Kern County is very large. And we had multiple offices from the west side of Taft to the north side, Delano, all the way to East Kern up in Mojave. And those are 2 3 hour, 2.5 hour, 4 hour round trip trips. And to the south, up to Frazier Park. Um, so in that area, I saw the varying degrees of need in each area, and it was very, very diverse. from the desert communities to the agricultural communities to the oil communities. So I got to see a lot and recognize that, the biggest, um, one of the most important things that public service, human services folks can do is know their communities. Because of that diversity, there is no one size fits all cookie cutter approach to delivering services. And you need to know them, and you need to know them. You need to be involved with them, and all. What that means is that, you know, you share, you worship with these folks. Your kids go to school with their kids. So that ability to connect and build relationships in the community and trust in the community is one of the keys to successful human services delivery systems. Um, and ultimately came into uh, being chosen to run the welfare reform policy unit. It was a newly created unit, knowing full well that they were going to, as using Bill Clinton's term back in '96, is we're going to reform welfare as we know it, that we knew we needed to change. Um, and I was honored to be picked to run that show and handpicked my staff to do this. And we recognized at that point in time that, human services, the county agencies, uh, required partnership to succeed, especially with outcomes being self-sufficiency and employment. You had to include private sector employers. So my goal was to try to, or my job was to try to engage and partner with all of them, which they've never partnered before. People were in silos. Um, First it was going, why are you calling me? That territorialism. Other department heads, some workforce investment heads from health to behavioral health to the nonprofits, they're just going, well, why are you even inviting me? Well, it was one of those things where you had to err on the side of including versus excluding. Um, Social services, although we ran the program, we got the grant along with the state. It's that we're not on an island. We all serve the same people and we see them at different stages of their day, their month, their weeks. So having that, the ability to communicate and build those linkages and partnerships were critical. Um, so needless to say, we implemented welfare reform, very successful in Kern County at the time. Carl was employment specialist over there, and we actually did a lot of innovative things, contracted out with private sector, which really was brought in a collective bargaining to the issue. It was time limited, and I think we were one of the first counties to do that. Um, but it went back, and the department wound up getting that back. Um, but as the policy director for all new programs came through my doors for review, and also, concurrent with that was the creation of Tribal TANF during the welfare reform. And I knew that I've seen a lot. I knew what worked and what didn't work in public human services delivery, and I saw this opportunity to have the ability to start from scratch and design a program that tribes can utilize. And that was a learning curve for me.
Mhm.
Um, I did, there's, up until recently, there was no federally recognized tribe in Kern County. Um, so it was a significant learning curve, and it was a large consortium. We modeled and expanded out. So you had to learn about multiple tribal councils, the way they govern, their culture and their history. Um, but it's been a super, super rewarding experience. And trying to advocate for tribes as a partner with the feds. Feds have federal trust responsibility to tribes. Tribes are sovereign governments, the right to self-govern and self-determine themselves. And that's been a battle from the very beginning. I mean, this is year 30 of TANF, and there's still lack of knowledge at the federal level about the trust responsibility they have for tribes, the requirement of multiple executive orders of tribal consultation. Um, their sovereign right to self-govern. So it's been a long uh, enriching journey working with folks. And you sort of take for granted on the leadership side of the equation that, again, levels of governance and infrastructure capacity are all there with these sovereign nations and tribes. They're not. Some are very, very sophisticated, very, again, run better governments than municipalities and counties and things like that. But some are just uh, uh, at the very level of just getting through, uh, you know, grants and the budget years and things like that. So, uh, and talent management and recruitment is can be problematic along with the political structures of tribes. So I think it's ever evolving. And recently, the environment, the federal environment, which is a lot, many of the funding is federal, um, and that the engagement with the federal folks, I've seen significant changes over the last 2 decades of compromise and work and negotiation at the federal level that are impacting folks who are in need, governments that provide that need, um, because it's so partisan. And those are the challenges that are facing everybody right now is getting through that and trying to be bipartisan and being true public servants. That those are challenges that will remain and are subject to change in every 4 year cycle of the executive branch. So it's been fun. It's been tough. It's been disillusionable. But it's well worthwhile when you see success for tribes, for the families that the tribes serve, and the families that the human services sector serves.
Mhm. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I know I wasn't working in human services during that first round of, like you say, what was called welfare reform. I was right on the other end of it when it was probably brand new. We were
Yep.
kind of figuring things out, and it's quite interesting that 30 years later, it feels like in many aspects we're still in the same exact place, just with different laws and different
Yes.
rules. Um, but I do know, at least for like the CalWorks program and a lot of the financial programs, there's a new shift coming and
Yes.
another way. I don't necessarily even want to call it reform per se, but really bringing back, I think, with what you started with, which is like humanizing human services. And like the way that I have been trying to describe it is we have to move away from like government helping citizens, which is, true, but it's more of neighbors helping neighbors. And
Yeah.
so if we can like adopt the mindset, I'm a neighbor who's helping my neighbor. I just happen to work for the local government.
Yeah.
But I'm the expert in the services and the programs, and I want to hear what you need so I can get you connected to all of these plethora of resources without judgment. That's kind of the shift that at least California is moving in. The federal government, that's a whole other beast. And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. That shifts, with whoever the administration is. And so I always go back to, it's important to vote for
Yep.
people who will love your neighbors
Yep.
because our whole communities are very dependent on the support that everyone receives,
Yes.
both from those who are the most prosperous, but also those who are the most vulnerable. And if anybody's suffering, then I think we're all suffering. So,
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely agree.
hmm hmm
Yeah, so and that's a challenge. I mean that's so nuanced and layered, especially I think, like you mentioned, neighbors helping neighbors. That's something I'm working with now with the Family First Prevention Services program. Just some of the training that's being rolled out to child welfare social workers. is trying to change the mindset of mandated reporting to community supporting, and it's a great shift in terms, and it rhymes, and it's it's great,
Mhm.
but and I feel it because that's how I came into human services, but some folks come into it for a job, right?
Yeah,
And then some people get mandated reporting training that's maybe a half an hour or something that's
yeah,
online where they're just trying to click the button so they get certification so they can start doing whatever they're doing.
right.
And not all mandated reporting training is the same, and so it's really hard. And then also I think in the cities, I mean, just in the larger cities in California, you have folks that are not neighbors, right? You have people that work for municipalities that are almost like invading forces. They don't live where
Yep.
they work because they can't afford. I can't afford to live, in the Bay Area. And if I had a job with the Bay Area County, I'd probably be living on the periphery and
Right.
commuting in like a lot of people do. And I think that happens with law enforcement, with health services, with fire, right? So you have folks who it's a challenge for them to feel that sense of community when it's not their community, it's their job,
Right.
right? And so in the smaller communities, I think, like Merced or even Bakersfield's a big town, but it's very, I've chewed a lot of dirt in
Oh, yeah,
Bakersfield, and it's a very small town
it is.
feel where people feel like everyone knows each other, right?
Mhm.
But and so people can live there and work there, but I think a lot of just those industries and those
Right.
jobs kind of follow the lead of the voices and the different makers, and a lot of difference
Right.
makers come from the larger cities, and so it really is something that people face. And I was going to ask you that, Glenn, in terms of in your role, as a consultant working with different tribes and different agencies, um, do you see any difference? Tiff mentioned there's not much difference just on the ground level where we work, and it just, at the worker and first line
Mhm.
supervisor level, over these last 30, 35 years. What's a big shift that you've seen in how leaders interact with their staff and with their programs?
I think what I've been seeing, at least in the tribal TANF side of the equation recently, a recent is that you have new leaders that have barely even had supervisory type of experience going into a leadership role, um, that brings in all of those periphery things, important things like budget, grant management, um, along with identifying the culture and strategy. So that's one big thing is new leaders are coming in, some prepared, some not prepared, but doing their best. Um, but the ability to develop them in order for them to reinitiate enthusiasm in that, because there's just so much right now. There's declining public trust in public services. There's political partisan polarization. There's in human services field, there's budget cuts or budget warnings. Um, Organization, everybody has a change model, and there's organizational change fatigue for people. And that's what I see is that, you have, to be responsive to your communities, you need to change. And change, as everyone knows, is a very difficult proposition. So that takes a lot from both the leaders side, because they're saying to themselves, we've done so much. We've every year we identify new priorities and new objectives and goals every year, and just the ability to keep my head above water, with limited resources, um, with the talent management and talent retention issues that are out there normally. It's a difficult proposition. But again, I think with human services leadership, I think the heart and the empathy of a human services leader sort of sort of takes control even amongst the chaos. to try to make that work. And that's the resiliency and the commitment for quality services. I see it all the time. They want to get better. They want to see changes to the people they serve while being financial stewards of public funding. Um, it- but again, it leads to those classic things of retention, burnout, fatigue in this type of field. Which again, there's no simple solution for it. Um, I do think having the infrastructure, the organization, whatever it is, be a government, a tribal government, a nonprofit, having the infrastructure uh, to be responsive to both staff needs. Because again, programs are only as good as the staff, the frontline staff providing the services. Um, so it's super, super important that the leaders are present and listening to their teams in order to provide the best possible service for the communities that they serve. Because it's in their heart. I mean, you see it all the time, and that's when you see them saying they're struggling. They're struggling. They're struggling with the political environment that's out there. They're struggling with things that are out of their control. So many things that I work with in the leadership space is really what the best way to combat some of these things is make the changes of things you control. You usually control your program design, your training and leadership at that level. And again, because again, you'd be beating your head up against a wall with things that you just don't have control over. But that's difficult for sure.
Yeah. To me, I try to always think of these things on like a parallel process, and I want to agree and acknowledge that this is definitely a really challenging environment for a lot of people who work for government right now, because you know maybe your county's mission, vision, and values doesn't align with like what legislation is saying, and so it's like you're between a rock and a hard place. But I also, with what Carl brought up, for a lot of people, this may not be a calling for them, where they got into this work to really, change the world or help the community, whatever it is. It's just a job, right?
Yep.
Like times are tough. I need something that's got, longevity and security and health insurance, etc. But this is where I think leadership, we have an obligation to create the environment that we want to see in the public. And so when I mentioned earlier, neighbors helping neighbors, which I agree sometimes is true, Carl, like geography, we don't see it like that, but it doesn't mean it's not impossible. We're people helping people, humans
Yep.
helping other humans. Like we have to create that type of environment from a leadership perspective where employees feel seen and heard and valued and appreciated, and they are treated like human beings as well, not just how do we extract the most value,
Right.
how do we get the most productivity out of people, because just because you work for government doesn't mean you're not experiencing some of the same things that our clients are. That doesn't mean you don't have domestic abuse or substance
Right.
use or homelessness or whatever, food insecurity, all those things. So how do we kind of model what we want by creating the environment where we are also people helping people? So if I'm your leader and you come to me with a challenge, hey, I'm having a hard time succeeding at work, or I'm having a hard time just in general, how do we create that same type of camaraderie and support and engagement, while on the other flip side of that, keeping abreast of all of the policies, procedures, and rules and regulations and laws that we have to follow,
Yep.
but still helping people navigate through change? So that, to me, there's like this parallel process where we want the workers to help the people in a certain way. Like we have to show them what it feels like.
Yep.
Because it's hard. And I see this all of the time. Again, I've never worked in Kern County. I don't know what it was like. I've worked with some of the tribes. I've never worked for the tribes. And so um, it's interesting that a lot of times leadership has really high expectations of how workers should be treating people, and then they don't do it, right? They don't do it. And so that's where I think there's a huge disconnect and an opportunity for leadership to come in and say, yes, this is all very complicated. Just like, by the way, living in poverty, is very complicated. It's not a simple thing. And so we have all of these complicated realities, and there's so much that we can't control, but here's what we can. How do we empower people to embrace that given the challenges? I think that's the call to action
Yeah,
here in 2026. You know,
I
what
agree.
would you recommend? What would you recommend? You got all this experience. You've
Well,
been through this a few times. What
I
would you
think
recommend?
the biggest thing, well, a couple things. One is just transparency via communication, effective communication.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the ivory tower, you know, administrations over there, they don't see what we're doing out in the field. You have to engage, you have to be present, um, and you have to uh, empathize with staff in order for them to do the best they possibly can. But also hold folks accountable. That's part of that too, because
Right.
I've seen it where, you know, performance management is lacking, and they're and leadership are going, why aren't we doing better? Well, have you are you managing performance? Do you have clear, you know, vision, mission, values, objectives, priorities, and then are you training? Because again, many issues, you know, I almost it's like 75% of issues is lack of training, is a training issue. You just train folks and communicate with them. It could be fixed, and it could be fixed relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I think you know, knowing your people and being there for them, but holding them accountable as well, and holding yourself accountable.
Right.
Um, because again, I think that things go south when there there's not presence there. We're alone. You know, let's say an outlying office, we're alone. We never see anybody. We're just doing our, we never get feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. That's when things could get crazy too. Things could be, you know, crazy things could be happening. And if you're not even, you know, tapping to the community too, it could all be hidden almost, especially in smaller communities. And that's where just the big blowups are. Um,
Right.
but but again, it's you know, it's called human service for a reason. You need to be able to build relationships, trust, uh, but with accountability as a leader, and it's self accountability as well. You talk the talk, you better do it.
Yeah. I heard a good quote one day that said, empowerment without accountability
Yeah,
creates entitlement.
yeah,
And I really love that because like, I don't know, I think I'm an optimist, and I like want to see the best future possible. And then what I see is that we're going to have workplaces in government, in private sector, whatever it is, where people can come to work, be confident in their job, do it to the best of their ability, leave it there, go home, live their best life, come back and do it over and over again, right?
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's my ultimate goal, right? No trauma, no drama, just
right.
people can come to work and do their best work. And so with that, we've got to have a bit of allowance for people to be themselves, to bring their gifts, to
Yep,
acknowledge their challenges, all of those things, ourselves included, um, and having mechanisms in place to help, again, like training, development, coaching, whatever it is, to help people be them best selves. All of this requires like a huge amount of vulnerability and a
yes,
whole lot of trust, and you know, less competitiveness and more cooperation. Like these are all big things, and I don't want to just throw out like the buzzwords of the week, because this is really like the vision
yep,
that we can come as human beings and really like do amazing things. And we know it can happen because it happens all of the time.
it does.
um, but it does require that accountability piece. And I think the honesty And unfortunately, at least in my own experience, I think people have been very afraid to tell each other the truth, the good, the bad, or the ugly, because then it creates some maybe discomfort or
Mhm.
uncomfortable conversations or potentially some hurt egos or hurt feelings. And we don't want to do that. So we avoid it. And then we
Right.
just keep perpetuating these same issues over and over and over again. So um, I don't know. I maybe I'm in my feelings right now because I just we just all need some humility,
Sure.
willingness and ability to ask for help or accept help when it's offered. Um, like we have to be able to hold each other accountable. Like I don't have to be your boss, Glenn, to tell you you're having a rough day. I should be
Right.
able to come to you as a peer and say, hey, I'm noticing you're struggling. What can I do to help? That type of stuff. But people are
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
so afraid that it's gonna go the wrong way. And so they avoid it at all costs. And it just
Yeah.
perpetuates this over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
I want to say the same for truth, like truth to power. You know, I can tell you, my Congress people and my senators hate to see my name in an email because I I have something I'm mad about every single week, and so I'm like, what can I do, right? I can let them know as a constituent, this is what I want to see,
Yep.
and I need you to vote in this way. Let me stay involved. Here's how it's impacting me. Here's how it's impacting others. I want you to have all of the information that you need to make informed decisions. And I
Right.
don't think enough of us do that because, and not just at a big level, like at government level, which, is very helpful, by the way. I always get a response. It's not always, you know, specific to what I said, but I usually get a
It's a
response.
response.
Get a response. Somebody's reading it or at least acknowledging it. So that makes me feel better. But even in our workplaces, like we have to communicate with our leadership of what our experience is because we have different perspectives. What I'm seeing that affects me maybe as a line staff may not be apparent to my supervisor, to my manager, to my director. And it's not me just going to say, hey, Glenn, I have an opinion. Let me share that with you. But like, let's share real feedback. Like, I'm
Right.
trying to do my work and this is what's getting in the way,
Yep.
or this is what I'm experiencing. And leadership has to be able to take that as just information, not
Yep. Yeah.
not it's just information.
Yeah.
It's not an attack on your
Yeah.
leadership skills. It's not who you are, what you do, but that helps you make the most informed decisions
Mm.
when looking at strategy and policy
Yep.
and how things are happening. Because
Yeah.
if you're not getting that, you can't make good decisions. And so
Right.
But
we
it's
have
it's
to be willing to share it.
and it's so hard and it's so difficult. I mean, it's something you see. I do 360 feedback loops all the time with leaders, and those that have great marks, high marks, consistently high or low marks. One of the lowest scores they have, and one of the questions that are asked is asks for feedback, right? And a lot of people, they have all intention of being open and honest and vulnerable with folks. It's just they've never thought of having a specific conversation with somebody. How am I doing? How can I support you better? They just have that open door policy, but no one walks through that open door because they don't want to bug their manager, right?
Right.
And this is something I saw this week. I was working with leaders from a huge state org, and they are dealing with just pressure from the job and the necessities of the job and the budget that's coming down, the block grants, everything else. Plus, also there's going to be a new administration coming in, next year. We just in California just had the return to work order starting to be enforced. That's a huge issue with folks, right? And
Oh, yeah.
so, and it may not necessarily always grab people in a specific way, especially those folks in senior leadership who might have already always been in the office, or just even line staff who, there's folks that have to be there. People who work in the lobby had to be there through COVID, right? So a lot of times, some of these things may just fall through the cracks, or like you mentioned, Tiff, sometimes it's hard to have conversations about them. Accountability, creating those accountability factors for your staff. I told them on Tuesday, one of the biggest issues with accountability is accountability that you have for other people. When you
Yep.
say, hey, this came down from above, or the law just passed, don't shoot the messenger, it's not my fault, you've given all of your power
Yep.
away. And so your staff does not feel like you are in a position to support them. You are in the same hole that they are, and none of us have the way out.
And
right? And
you just
so
get paid more.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So you don't you cede your power by, even if you don't agree with the policy. I mean, I was there when the DRA was passed in 2006, welfare reform, and I told my staff, "Hey, look, this is what we're facing, and this is what's coming down the pipe." And so this is going to happen, and we have standards that we're going to hold and enforce you to. So what can we
Yep.
do to help you make your job easier? And that was my, rather than saying, guys, we have to go through this crap again and blah blah blah, right? That's sure. I'm empathizing with you, but at the same time, am I putting myself in a position to be your conduit, your advocate
Yeah.
to address issues that are affecting not just our clients, but our workforce,
Yeah.
right? And so it's such a huge piece.
And getting them involved in the end product,
Yeah,
participation in groups that, they on the front line, they see it every day,
yeah,
versus top down. Have them come up with a solution through work groups. Again, participating in the process
Yep.
versus, and that's a struggle too, because
yeah,
especially in instances where they've never had that opportunity, but
yeah,
they have wonderful ideas.
yeah,
And especially on the standpoint of workflow changes, their line staff always say, "Why are we doing this?" And when there's not an answer on why, then why are we doing it? Even
yeah,
puts more credence on making changes to help them, and it supports their their criticism of the system, or lack of a better word, that you are doing something about it as a leader, because
yeah,
you recognize that versus we've always done it this way. I mean, that's I hear that a lot, but I always try to challenge them. So is it helping you? Is it helping the
yeah,
families you serve? Or is it helping your customer, whatever it may be? And what Tiffany said is about resilience, and asking for assistance or asking questions is a strength, not a weakness. It is a strength. And like in some of the classes that we do, the trainings that we do, questions and engagement, if there's nothing out there, then I'm doing something wrong, because they haven't, uh they don't trust, or they're hesitant to say, "Hey, it'll make me not look so strong, and I'm in a leadership position." But boy, oh boy, I mean, especially when you have your peers in a workshop, or in a team environment, boy, one person saying something can open the floodgates to better communication, and a recognition that we have we have the same issues. We've had these issues before. Here's what we did that were successful. May work with you, but here's some ideas. And
yeah,
that's the power of 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 removing isolation from where you're at. Because I mean, there's managers and supervisors and directors all over the country, all over the world, that have come across things. And so just recognizing that there's a lot of information out there to help.
yeah. And,
You
and I
know,
appreciate,
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, Tiff.
I'm sorry, I just want to say, I think the other part of that too is, when changes are happening at a policy or legislative level, they're happening with leadership at the same time. It's not
Yep.
like, leaders get a head start before like, we're going to give you all 6 months to wrap your
Right.
head around, and then go ahead and share it with your staff. No, a lot of times things are all happening at the same time. And so where people are looking towards leadership to be the experts in these things that are new, foreign, the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Um, we as leaders can bring people in to say, look, none of us know. This is what we all know, and
Right.
what do we collectively need to do to make this work and make this successful, and get that participation in the process. Like, here's what we can't control. Here are the things that have been decided. This is what we have to do. How are we going to do it in the best way, given
Yeah,
our circumstances, given our realities, given your workloads? Like,
Yep.
how are we going to make this
and
happen? And I think that's where, again, I keep coming back to this mentality of neighbors helping neighbors.
yeah,
We have to be a we. It can't
yeah,
be you, it can't be them, it can't be us. Like, we have to be a we if we're going to
yeah.
move forward.
And
Absolutely.
And
that's, yeah.
yeah.
And I love that idea. And I think that's a lot of some of the things that we're hearing in policies that are being made in human services in this state, at least, with the idea of parent voices, right? Lifting parent voices as subject matter experts. Also, if there are stuff that we don't know what's coming down the pipe, guess what? I have a whole team of subject matter experts that work for me that may be seeing things that I don't see because I'm not on the front lines every day. So give me that information. And that's part of vulnerability too, because like you said, we're
Right.
supposed to, the further we go, we're supposed to just
Yeah.
know more.
Know it
Right.
all.
So Glenn, thank you so much for being with us today.
My
We really
pleasure.
appreciate it. It's a great conversation. And, we do this, guys, we do the Tribal TANF Institute every year. And, we spend our entire lunches and breakfasts having these conversations. So I knew this would be something that would definitely get us motivated and going. You mentioned young leaders, and that's something that you're seeing today. So the last thing I wanted to ask you is, what advice would you give to a young leader in developing that rapport, that sense of community, that sense of connection with their team? What's one main thing that they can start with that's low hanging fruit that they can, really start with and enforce that to build that trust?
Well, I would say first and foremost is honesty and relationship. I mean, they have to be present. They can't be behind closed doors, say I have an open door policy. Your staff need to know you, just like you need to know them. And because again, especially in tribes specifically, the staff to supervisor or management ratio are very small. So it really is prime to build that relationship and know it's just like, in order for staff to provide services, they need to know what makes their families or the adults click. It should be this exact same way.
Parallel
Yeah.
Exact
process.
same way.
Yep. Yep. I'm with you. Vote for Glenn. I don't know what he's running for, but you got my vote.
Oh, the
Yep.
golf course. That's
The
what I'm
golf
running
course.
for.
That's where
I want to be the
he's running the
marshal
golf
at the
course
golf
after
course.
this.
There
Yeah.
we go.
Okay, well, listen, I hope you get a hole in one. I'm gonna maybe two,
There
but I
we
don't want to
go.
be
Thanks,
greedy.
Tiff.
I don't want to be greedy though, just maybe one or two.
Well, I guess that gives me two more questions. So, first of all, where's your next 18 holes coming from? And second, what was your midweek mash yesterday?
Oh, my midweek mash was, let me think. I don't even remember now. Oh, it was a holiday sweet red wheat weeded bourbon, bottled in bond. So that was my yesterday's midweek mash. Every Wednesday, I imbibe in a dram, 1 ounce of bourbon, rye, scotch. And then in my next round of golf, I'm having two next week. I'm playing at River Ridge Golf Course in Oxnard.
Wow.
And then the weekend, I'm playing at Sandpiper in Santa Barbara with my daughter and son-in-law.
Fine.
You live a rough life, my friend. Let me tell you,
Well, listen, if you ever feel like coming to Baja, California, I happen to have a golf course right across the street.
I've
I know some people.
I've read about those golf courses. Yeah, I heard they're fantastic.
Well, I don't play golf, so but I can tell you the ninth hole's all right.
Exactly. There you go. There you
a
go.
10th hole. Yeah, yeah,
There you
absolutely.
go.
Well, thanks again so much, Glenn.
Always a
We really
pleasure.
appreciate you. And folks, where can folks reach you?
Oh, they can reach me at my website, gnbcinc.com, or at gbasconcillo at gmbcinc.com. That's my email.
Okay.
Love it.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again.
All
And
right.
thanks everyone for tuning in once again. And uh, until next time, I'm Carl.
I'm Tiff, and that's
And
Glenn,
that's
Have a great
and
week.
we're
that's
all
Glenn.
and we're all keeping it real.
Yes.
Take care.